Republican Bob Corker lost it on Republicans for being Trump sycophants. Check it out.
We're in a strange place. I mean, it's almost, it's becoming a cultish thing, isn't it? It's not a good place for any party to end up with a cult-like situation as it relates to a president that happens to be purportedly of the same party. But there's no question that leadership in general is wary of doing anything that might upset the president. I mean, we're going to be here during recess, generally speaking, which is fine with me. But it's more about Trump being upset than it is anything else. So look, I mean, it's just there. It's not a place that I wish we were. I want to say we have a lot of people who are willing to do the things that they feel are right for our country. We have some who are fearful of upsetting the president. Again, it would mostly be around the leadership. But it's not a good place for us to be. I mean, I think about, the things that we, generally speaking, have stood for. There have been variations. Every person has a different point of view, but sort of where the Republican Party has been traditionally and where it is today is quite divergent. And it seems to me that we, especially on things like trade, that has been one of our central elements is fair but free trade, and to have an administration that wakes up every day on an ad hoc basis just making stuff up as they go along with no coherency to it. I think us having to weigh in on that would actually cause them to have to think about what they're doing versus, well, I'm upset with X today, so I'll do this.
So Bob Corker is half right and half terribly wrong. The part he's right about is just on the general idea that there are many people who have turned off their minds and they'll follow Trump come hell or high water. Doesn't matter. Sean Hannity is a great example of that. No matter what Trump does, he's going to defend it. He just did segments fawning over a potential peace deal with North Korea. This is the same guy who was against any kind of peace deal with Iran and against any kind of peace deal with Cuba. And in fact, he accused Obama of being weak and, coddling dictators when he tried to pursue peace in that realm. So it's true. There's a lot of cultish stuff going on now, and people who genuflect at the altar of Trump because he's a strong man, and if you don't do his bidding, he might send some mean tweets your way. So I definitely think that's true. Now, Bob Corker is allowing himself to be more honest. He's a senator from, I think it's Tennessee, and he's retiring after this term. So he's not up for re-election. So he feels like, I'll tell people what I really think now. I'm not playing the game anymore. Jeff Flake, same thing. He's retiring, so he feels like he could be more honest, and he's kind of paved this path as the person who says the most anti-Trump stuff. But again, and here's the part where he's totally wrong, look at the record of Bob Corker. Look at the record of Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake votes with Donald Trump about 90% of the time. Bob Corker votes with Trump about 85% of the time. So that sure is a hell of a lot of bark and not a lot of bite for a guy who's talking about cultish activities. You're with the cult 85% of the time, but you are so concerned about the cultish activities. Same with Jeff Flake. Here's the thing, guys. Their biggest problem with Donald Trump is the mean tweets. They want somebody to continue the U.S. empire. They want somebody to continue doing the bidding of Wall Street and Big Pharma and the military-industrial complex and the for-profit health insurance companies, but be smooth about it. Don't be unhinged. Don't be rude. Have proper decorum and politeness as you continue to bomb innocent people and give all the money to the rich and screw over poor people. That's what they want. Now, you might say, well, that's unfair. That's an unfair categorization. Is it? Again, look at their voting record. And by the way, oftentimes, the few areas where these guys disagree with Trump is right. So, for example, guys like Jeff Flake, guys like, Bob Corker, they were apoplectic that Trump killed TPP. Now, make no mistake about it, Donald Trump is bringing it back in various ways, slipping provisions into the renegotiation of NAFTA. He floated about a month ago, actually just flat out getting back in TPP. So I don't want to praise Trump too much here, because ultimately he is an outsourcer when it comes down to it. But that's the stuff, whenever he even nominally does something that's not terrible, that's when they're like, oh, how dare you. Now, the tariffs, I half agree with Corker, because the way Trump is doing these tariffs is terrible. He's genuinely sparking a trade war, and he really doesn't know. Oh, for all the talk about, I'm president deals, I negotiate. I don't think he's good at negotiating. I think he's pretty fucking terrible, and he finds a way to, like, poke people with a stick and piss them off, and then they retaliate. So I'm not in principle against tariffs. I think there's a reasonable way to do a form of protectionism, but I certainly don't agree with the way Donald Trump is doing that. So I half agree with Bob Corker on that. But the thing that's so frustrating is, yet again, look at the issue that led Bob Corker to speak out. So in other words, it wasn't Charlottesville, where Trump made some comments that had every reasonable person in the country rolling their eyes. I mean, we had a fucking protest where white supremacists were chanting, Jews will not replace us, white lives matter. They were protesting to keep up a Confederate monument, and Trump comes out there talking about both sides. Both sides have problems, and both sides have plenty of good people. It wasn't Charlottesville that led him to this. It wasn't ending DACA. It wasn't the shitty GOP healthcare law, which had like a fucking 30% approval rating. It's not the fact that 3 million more people lost health insurance. It wasn't firing Comey. It wasn't obstructing justice. It wasn't supporting, it was always whatever shit hurts the bottom line of corporations more. That's what he gets mad about. Was he talking about cult-like activities when the fucking healthcare bill, when the tax bill passed, 83% of the benefits going to the top 1%, raising taxes over a decade for the top, for people who make $75,000 a year or less? He didn't say shit then, because he supports that shit. So whenever it's like, oh, you're threatening corporate power, now I'm going to lash out viciously. So I always have mixed feelings when these Republicans, these ultimate establishment Republicans, suddenly speak out and pretend like they're being bold. My point is, if you're part of the resistance, don't welcome this guy in with open arms, because his ideology is still odious. That's why he agreed with Trump 85% of the time. And that's why the few times he dissents from Trump is because he's to the right of Trump, not to the left of Trump. So, yeah, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by these people. I'm really not. If they were to take some sort of a stand and be correct on policy, then I'll defend him. If you had Bob Corker come out and say Donald Trump signed a pro-torture executive order, I don't agree with that. I'm a small government conservative. I think the government gets stuff wrong all the time. I wouldn't trust them with torturing somebody. That's illegal, that's unconstitutional, that's immoral. If he was making that argument, I'd be defending Bob Corker 100%. He's not making that argument. He trotted out the idea that Trump has a cult when Trump does tariffs. It's ridiculous.